Hey.
Hello. Hey. Oh,
Hey.
I feel like I'm going to cough. Okay, maybe not.
Are we going to start with that?
I don't know.
You can decide post.
You tell me, Jen. We'll see.
Yeah. I'm excited about today's topic because it is the thing that I talk about with people the most. And so I'm pumped.
That's true. This is your bag.
This is my
So,
wheelhouse.
I'm excited about it too. I don't know if I have always talked about sizing as much as I think about it, but I am a lot more comfortable talking about it in the last year or so, because that's a hell of a topic and it takes a while to get your head around. So I think we should
It
preface it
does.
all with that, right?
Yeah. Some of the topics that we're going to talk about here, I have had to talk with designers multiple times before they fully sink in. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about a lot of sizing information today. And if you, the listener, end up feeling saturated, that's normal. We're going
Yeah.
to go hard.
This
Yeah.
might be one you want to save and come back to, like when you're planning your next project or even dissecting a project that didn't turn out the way that you hoped. Yeah.
Yeah. And for folks who don't learn best this way, in the show notes, we'll also have links to at least a couple of my blog posts that I've put together on this sizing this way with visuals so you can digest them at your own speed. And I think maybe you have some things we can link to too, Bess.
I do for sure. Yeah. And
Cool.
yeah, and I guess right up front, we'll also say that we have deeper conversations about these topics on our Instagram and also even more so on both of our newsletters. So if you are interested in our chats and you're not on those platforms with us, then join us over there. You can find that in our show notes. We'll link to it for this episode.
So yeah, today we're going to be talking about choosing a size, and we'll be getting into using a schematic to do that. But should we do some chit chat first?
Yes.
Should we catch up?
Yes. You start this week. I think I always start.
Do you?
Yeah. What's your tea?
Okay. Old coffee. But look, I also brought one of my favorite chocolate bars. This is called Hedgehog in the Fog.
That
and
looks
it is
great.
a bergamot white chocolate. It has black pepper in it, so it's got some warmth.
I'm like freaking out over that. I would love that.
It's so good. I love it so much. I have to order them from Portland, so they're a special treat. Yeah. So maybe I'll be sharing that today. We'll see how things go.
All right.
I am out from. Okay, I have a couple things going on, and they all relate to getting my mojo back. So I was working on that last project for like 6 months. That never happens to me. And I didn't realize how mired and burned out and uninspired that left me feeling. And so I started a new project. Do you want to see it?
Yes, show us.
See it?
We're on the verge of becoming one of those podcasts.
We can't do it. We can't do it. This is not a What's on Your Needles podcast. But look at her.
I do love it. I love that color palette.
Woolen palette. She's so good.
She is so good.
Well, that's that.
See, in this lighting, those stripes, we were talking about the stripes on that sweater, everyone, and how, this is like flashback to episode number 5, I believe, is about color. And Jen is amazed that I pulled that from my memory. I saw it on your face.
Like,
you went like this.
Wow.
I have a great memory for certain things.
Numbers, apparently.
More like the number with the topic. Or labels. I could tell you the name of Lululemon named the tank tops that they would sell when I was an ambassador, and I could tell you the name of all of the ones that were in my wardrobe at that time, which was it wasn't something I tried to remember. So
categorical labels. That makes sense.
Yes, I like the categories. Sorry, I bashed my microphone there. Anyway, back to your sweater.
Yeah. Back to my sweater.
So we were talking about the contrast because in some light, especially in like the bright kind of light that we might photograph like a sample in, the white sections could look bigger than those dark blue sections because white is just like a brighter color that's going to read as like a larger space, and the blue is naturally going to read as a slightly diminished space. But in this light, I was going to say they look very even. So
Good.
yeah, I was in the camp of keeping them the same size because different lighting would change the amount that you might see differently. So
Yeah.
that's a little note on stripes. But if you're working high contrast, y'all, maybe you'll make the dark ones like an extra 2 rows bigger or something. That's a trick you could do if you're working with high contrast stripes.
Yeah. I was thinking about your voice, like bright colors in a contrast pair, the bright color is going to come forward. And so I had messaged you to say, hey, do you think that I should do a different number of rows to offset that effect so that they continue to look like they're the exact same width? But I do think it turned out okay. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
there's other stuff going on. So then I think it makes more
it
sense
adds
as
some
it
motion.
is.
Still appreciated your feedback.
But oh, whatever, it's fun. It's lovely. I'm really psyched you have your mojo and something new on your needles. It's a great feeling. I have been
Yeah.
bogged down with projects for 6 months before, because sometimes, or even like when it's off my needles, but I've had a couple of like times that I've had to sort of go back into a test and like do it. Recently last year I did a whole second test group on one of my releases because I wanted to tweak something. And then, the good girl thing is to make sure that you can't like change a whole measurement on the schematic and
Yeah.
then be like, no need to test, we're fine. Like, so I retest it, and it just can feel, it's not necessarily a huge deal, but it feels not as much fun, not as inspired, not as creative, not as
I
watery.
felt really incompetent until yesterday. Like I just felt like I'd lost my competence across the board. Like I felt like I was not a competent knitter. I felt like I was not a competent designer. I just felt really shaken. And I don't think I realized the extent to which I was feeling those things until I was like, I'm in a groove. I want to keep knitting. This is clicking. It's coming out as intended. Like some projects just fight you. They just fight you.
Well, yeah. And like what I'm thinking of as I'm listening to you talk about this is that in any creative pursuit, there's going to be areas or projects where we really struggle. We're trying a different technique, which is exactly what it was with you. And that technique is not as familiar, or we're not as skilled, or we're not as practiced in it, right? Saying skilled is just another way of saying practiced. So the difference though with knitting is that these things, like each project, even if nothing goes wrong, can take so many hours that like being stuck in one or feeling stuck in one because it's not coming as naturally to you as you're used to, especially when you knit a lot, I think that can mess with your mind a bit, because
Yeah.
obviously like so many people would say that you're an incredibly skilled knitter and designer, but it can really like mess with your mind when you're looking at the same thing for like 6 months that you're like, I just can't get past this.
Yeah. Yeah. It usually takes me 90 days. Why am I here 300 days later?
Right. But if anyone is out there feeling like they're the only one that ever feels like a challenge is insurmountable, it definitely isn't. And we're out here still facing those things. It's just part of developing a mastery of craft.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's new with you? What's going on?
Well, Patty, if you haven't watched last week's episode, that is my new robot assistant, my AI scheduler. Patty has me knitting. I schedule my knitting as well as my work life, and she has me knitting 2 things at once, which is kind of wild for me. But I'm like, all right, I don't know, I'm going to listen to the robot. And so I got to cast on a new project yesterday, in addition to the sweater that I showed a peek of. I'm tempted. I want to show you how much. Listen, everyone, this is absolutely not one of those podcasts where every time we see you, we're going to be like, look at how much new work we've done. But you all have to understand that my stepkids spent a week at their grandparents' house, and we have full custody of them. So that means I had so much time that I knit this much of this sweater, like the whole thing almost. In like,
I feel like the fact that
we recorded that last episode about 10 days ago, and I think I was like just here on just the body. And I am a small size, but normally this amount of knitting would have taken me a lot longer. Look at the sleeve though. She's so cute.
I love that big old gather. I love it. It's lush.
It's very floof. So we'll see how it all blocks out, hopefully as nicely as I hope it is going to, as I think it's going to. But I'm very happy with that. And so yeah, it's like a spring feeling over here too. Things are moving along nicely, and that isn't always how I feel. So I'm just like enjoying that. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's no way you could confuse this with There's Something New on My Needles Every Week podcast.
No. But even just, I was like, should I show this sweater? Because I don't want people to think I knit a sweater a week. Because like when I lived alone, real talk, when I lived alone, I used to, because I could stay up all night until 4 a.m. knitting, watching TV by myself. It was glorious. My life now is glorious too. But usually I would just not have the time to knit that much. But because we were not parenting last week, it was like being on a little mini vacation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it was like a real treat to get to knit that much for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think my problem with, I call it knitting hustle culture, right? It's like, for some of us, we do knit a lot. Other people can't. I think when we start to think that knitting quickly is a value.
Right. Or that it's like supposed to be that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Or a default setting, or that once we finish something, we're over it. It's done. It's time to it's when it just starts to feel like consumerism that I get the ick. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel you. But then I think also it's important to remember that like nearly anyone who's knitting that quickly is probably knitting professionally, like knitting that much, because it symbolizes the fact that they have like full-time hours available to knit. And that's basically all that it symbolizes, that they're like capable of knitting 40 hours a week, and they have that much time to do that. And so they can finish a sweater in that time, because it's the same amount of time to finish a sweater fast or not. We're not talking about actually knitting fast per se. Some people do, but it's really more
scheduling.
Yeah, it's really more about like what amount of time you have available. So I think it's important to like look realistically at people who are posting a lot. It's like, well, are they like an influencer, or are they a designer? And like those people, that's their job,
Yeah. Which isn't how it looks from the outside. So it's good context to keep in mind.
It may or may not.
The internet is fake.
Right. We don't even know who's making money and who isn't on the internet. So, but someone who is knitting that much is at least treating it like their job.
Or special interest.
Super special. Which
that's coded language for my neurodiverse peeps, right? Special interest.
Yes.
Very coded language.
I've definitely, again, when I had availability for it, that is how I treated my knitting, even before it was a money-making hobby for me. I was certainly into knitting like all day if I could, and often I could. But life circumstance. So I think we're ready to roll the bum bum, and then we can then we can get going.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Alrighty.
We're back.
We are back. So this week we have actually a really great comment from Brittany that was left on one of my posts that is going to be inspiring some of our talk today. Jen's
we have a case study. Mm-hmm.
Jen is going to go ahead and read that comment for us, and let's go.
Thank you, Brittany, for your generosity in sharing this info. So Brittany had a comment, and then when we followed up with her to get some of her measurements so that we could use her as a case study for y'all, she was generous enough to share them. So Brittany said, I like open gauge knits, but I often find that they don't fit as well as knits with more compact stitches. I have a large bust, and things that are loose, drapey, or flowy, or shapeless make me feel a bit frumpy. I'd like to make more knits that are drapey if I could figure out what's the best size for me to knit when utilizing drapey fabrics. That applies to open gauge knits and yarn that has little memory like cotton, linen, and silk. So Brittany shared her measurements, and we're going to share two of them with you. So Brittany has an upper chest measurement of 42 inches and a full bust measurement of 47 inches, which is it's closer to my measurements than Bess's. It's one or two sizes, one size bigger than me. And it's worth noting that in my size chart, at least, that's two different sizes. So she would get a different result if she chose her measurements on one versus the other. And that's what we're going to get into, right?
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of what we're talking about today, really. When we talk about sizing, that conversation is, these days, it's largely about upper bust versus full bust. But there are some other things that we're going to be discussing, because that isn't like the end all be all of how to size well. It should also be noted, Brittany left a comment on one of my posts that was talking about gauge, like from the last episode that we did, episode 12. 13. Today is 14.
Today's 13.
I don't think so.
I believe you.
I think the last one was 13 because I was like, lucky number 13. But I don't know. We'll see. Look at the top. It'll say up here.
It'll say at the top. We can't get into this. We have boobs to talk about.
I know. It's Jen's favorite topic is boobs.
Let's just talk about tits, please.
Well, so what Brittany is saying about gauge is true to some extent, that smaller stitches, more compact stitches have more inherent structure in the fabric, less open gauge. However, in terms of sizing, let's start there. Jen, would you recommend different sizing mechanisms at a different gauge or different ease? Sometimes maybe if like negative ease versus positive ease.
Ask it again.
Okay. So sizing advice, would you give different advice? That's not the same word I used, but we'll use that word now. Different advice for sizing if the gauge is open and drapey versus compact. You said no. I would also say
at the end of the day, the sizing advice I always give is look at the measurements of the thing that you're getting, compare it to your own, and make sure you like what you're going to make. Right? Like that's the too long didn't read top of the triangle.
Yeah. So when we're talking about an open gauge knit or a drapey knit, there are different things that we can talk about in that, in terms of like how might you know that it's going to fit you the way that you like, and what does that mean, right? So that's like a big part of our conversation today. So then my second question there, or second like caveat, is that I feel like we do give slightly different sizing advice when we're talking about a negative ease garment versus a positive ease garment, or no? Yes. I mean, the only negative ease garment in my library is the bralette, and the sizing guidance was unique to that garment. So
yeah, I would say while the top of that pyramid, look at the schematic and make sure you like the measurements, doesn't change. The way you get there is a little different.
Yeah, I know the grading in terms of like how designers do the math on that is going to be really different. But I would imagine that sizing, looking at the schematic and knowing some basic information about intended ease, that applies to like pretty much any situation, right?
It does. And I think another thing that we wanted to say is often when we're talking about the way a loose gauge, oversized garment fits versus the way a tailored, structured garment fits, the design and grading process might be different for those in that
Mm-hmm.
it's just not, the sizing is just not quite as intentional, right? You're more likely to see a couple of rectangles stuck together in a loosey-flowy, oversized, loosey-goosey thing than
Right.
you are, yes.
But not to say that that's best practice necessarily. That is a certain look. And honestly, my Therese dress, I've used that as my example because that's my big oversized shift dress kind of design. And there is hip shaping, there is some bust shaping, but it certainly isn't like tailored. It isn't structured, and it is mostly, a giant rectangle, and
But
that's
it's still written to
okay.
fit.
Yes, it is. And
And and a lot of times what we see, at the risk of sounding holier than thou, a lot of times what we do see is we see garments that use oversized as shorthand for ill-fitting.
Well, I want to say this. You said that my Therese dress is designed to fit. And I would say that a lot of those big oversized drapey patterns are designed to knit, meaning they've been designed in a way that is simple for knitters. And there are a lot, there are a lot of people that will make that choice over and over again. Jen and I are both, it's totally fine. Jen and I are both designers that design things that are like fit and function first, and we enjoy the process of making something that's really well fitted, right? Like that's the thing that we like. So just popcorn knitting isn't satisfying to us if the end result isn't what we want.
Right.
But everyone's allowed to choose what kind of knitting they like to do and what kind of garments they want to make. Or if you want to, like, some people might not want to knit garments, and you might not like this podcast as much as people who do like to knit garments. But within the world of garments, there's a lot of different things that you prioritize in your experience. Like, do you only knit top down seamless? A lot of people do, and that's okay. It's okay to make whatever choice you enjoy, right?
Yes. And in a conversation like this, where we're setting out as an objective of this conversation to help people get the fit that they want, to help them predict the fit that they get, and to get a better fit than the one they have had in previous knits, it is important to differentiate that some patterns are written to knit and some are written to fit, and to say that. And I will link to some resources on evaluating patterns. And what it means for a pattern to fit, because that is subjective. So I will link to some external resources there when I do the show notes. But yes, I love prefacing with the nuance that you don't have to pursue that. That's not a moral high ground.
And designers don't have to pursue it. But
no,
what I think designers should do, and what good designers do, is they tell you up front the schematic, because that is all of our way of communicating to you what this finished garment is going to be like. One of the hardest things to learn how to do as a maker is to learn how to translate that two-dimensional symbolic drawing and measurements into like the three-dimensional concept of how something is going to fit on your body. And that's a skill that we can help you kind of figure out, so that something that fits well is something that fits the way you want it to, whether there's zero shaping in the garment or not. If it fits the way you want it to, then it fits well. If you know how to read a schematic, then you can get that fit.
I might get emotional because I love talking about fit so much.
I'll have you guys all know that Jen told me she would not cry when she met me after 3 years of being best friends, but she is crying because I said you could learn how to make a well-fitting garment. So I'm putting that out there. I love you.
I love this color red with my pink lips. It's
No, see, I'm like an empathetic crier now, and it's just gonna be back and forth. It's okay.
We can't. All right.
I like how glossy my eyes look when they water.
Yeah. Some people are blessed with being cute criers. I'm not one of them.
Oh no, I'm not. So... Trust me. An ex-boyfriend of mine told me one day when I was bawling in front of him because he was like, told me that he cheated on me again. And he was like, you're a really ugly crier.
Why even are boys? Why? Why are they?
They're people that you meet in college. Hopefully not after.
I try not to be a misinterest, but I don't do a good job of it, to be honest.
Once I started dating a woman, it was a lot easier because I have no hatred towards those that I don't really interact with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And honestly, like all the men that I have in my life are spectacular human beings. So
it's true.
You're right. We leave those people behind in college, and hopefully they grow up and mature too. I'm sure I was not the best in college. Anyway.
Oh, no.
This is off topic? This is off topic?
This is off topic.
Usually when I say this is off topic, you're like, no, it's not. This is off topic.
No, this time it is. We've wandered. Let's reel it back. Let's reel it back. And also I sucked in college too. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's the worst in their early 20s. You got to ripen. Sorry, listeners in your early 20s. It gets better. So here's the problem in the industry. Is that we are asking people to choose a size based on their full bust. That's the convention. That's 98% of patterns. And that's a garbage way to do it. And here's why. First of all, the sewists in the room know that you get your best fit when you fit from the top down. Second, you can take off your bra and your full bust changes.
Yeah.
So that's not the size of your body. Like that's just one measurement that's variable. And so what we want to do is we want to fit these relationships first and then address things as we go down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the standard. So that's problem one that leads people astray in their fit.
Right. I mean, it is, I don't know when the switch just like clicked for me, but for so long it just seemed like, because it's easier to just pick a size based on your full bust and just have like one measurement in your mind of like, this is my bust because this is the like bra band size that I wear or whatever. And
it's also often the biggest measurement, not always, but often it's the biggest measurement. And so it feels like if my biggest measurement will fit in the sweater, then it will fit me.
Right. And learning a new way of fitting can often feel intimidating. And we are all taught to fit from our full bust from the time we're like 10 years old, shopping for like a t-shirt, anywhere, the size charts that most retail stores will provide, whether it's on packaging or on a website or whatever. Most of the time those size charts are based on like 3 measurements. So when you get into actually making clothes and then you're looking at a schematic that has like 15 different measurements, I think it can be totally overwhelming and easy to just like stick with what we know. And I did that for a long time, but I did not achieve the same results like that at all. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and a lot of us are used to just accustomed and acclimated to getting a garbage fit from ready to wear, and we don't even know that something else is possible or available or that there's another way. So, when a designer is grading a pattern, which is the process of taking an idea and making it fit multiple sizes, we start with a size chart. And so across the top, it will have sizes 1 through whatever. And down the side, it will have all of the key fit measurements for the body. It will be a body size chart. And there will be a number assigned for each size to each of those measurements. And one of those measurements will be upper chest, one will be shoulder width, one will be arm side depth, and one will be full bust, hip, waist, etc. So we have all those measurements. And those size charts are based on population averages, so large data sets, and they assume, if you're relying on them, that there's a fixed bust size, that your boobs will be a certain size, for those of you with boobs, in relationship to those other measurements. So they assume that if you have a size 3 shoulder, upper chest, arm side, you will also have their size 3 bust. And so we get in trouble when we don't have the bust that the size chart predicts for our body size. And then we choose a size based on that.
Yeah, and if you're really interested in going deeper into that conversation, we have episode 2 is all about shape and size and the size charts and a longer conversation. We also have the bralette episode, which I think is like 8. I'm not actually sure. But that one is, I found my blind spot. That one, we also talk quite a bit about how in each of those sizes, it is essentially assigning you a bra size, right? So it's saying like the smaller end of the range, you're an A cup. At the larger end of the range, you are like an F cup, and then it's scattered in between. But we all know that that's not how bodies work. Even if you removed that measurement, so if we're talking about like a man size chart where there's not as much variability in their chests, still there isn't like a man walking around out there who is the average man, right? None of us, any gender, none of us conform to the averages listed in a size chart perfectly, which is why makers kind of learn to expect that they might want to make modifications to any pattern, a well-made pattern, a poorly made pattern, to any pattern at all, right? And this size chart and the schematic are both like the tools that empower you to learn how to do that. So you're getting all emotional again.
No, I have a really hot take, and I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to keep it to myself.
Well, do it. Look, we're already walking the line this episode. Walk the line.
We are. This is where a lot of efforts in the knitting community to do surveys on sizings go wrong. So the size charts that we have are based on large population data that is backed and supported by large organizations with talented statisticians, the ability to poll a huge population of the industry. And they're also linked into all of the major clothing producers who are giving constant fit feedback, right? And so then what you have is you have individuals in this community who want to do better. They want to get a better fit for more people, who do these surveys. And it's not statistically robust. The population data is not big enough. It's super subjective, and it's still not going to yield a result that works for every single person, because that's not possible.
Yeah, it's just not possible to have one set of data and apply it to a diverse range of people, because we're not data.
My personal belief is that it's far better for knitters to have the education to evaluate any given pattern,
Mm-hmm.
and make an informed decision for their own body than it is to try and have 18 size charts for different combinations of variety. That's one theory of change. There are other theories of change. All of it is valuable. Anything in the pursuit of getting people into garments that fit them better is good. Mm-hmm. But personally, I think there's a lot of value in everybody using standard population data, because then it's portable. It's portable, like you were saying. You can go from one pattern to another, and yes, you need to evaluate the schematic, but you have a general understanding. I differ from the average in this way, and therefore, I know I need to be careful about the bicep. I know I need to be careful about the hip and waist. I know my bust is going to be bigger than the designer predicts. I'm probably going to need a full bust adjustment. So there's a lot to unpack there, and that's a hot take. I may change my mind.
Well, yeah, it's a hot take, but I don't think it's so controversial. But I mean, I suppose it depends on who you ask, but it's not like any of the work that people are doing is bad work, but it's just to say that like these size charts that exist, there isn't really anything inherently wrong with them, because they are like essentially the best product that we can get from a very scientific method. And it's like Jen is saying, and I agree, what works best in our opinions is to know yourself, and to know that you will not be the same size as a size chart in every measurement. And you might not have variety that makes a big difference in your sizing, but you very well might. And most people, I think, will. So once you figure out how you like to size yourself, or how you like to tweak things, then yeah, like you said, then you can sort of know that going into any project. And it doesn't have to be this expectation or label that like if a certain designer's design didn't work for you, that like they're a bad designer.
Right.
It doesn't really mean that. If they gave you the information up front, then they're a good designer. That's my opinion as well, because you can take it or leave it at that point. So anyway, moving out of that topic, I think we want to talk a little bit more about how to size, right?
Yeah. So we have moved, both of us, towards providing sizing guidance based on your upper chest.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that we do that, even though upper chest is never a measurement that will appear on the garment, is because it's a good predictor for how your key fit measurements up here, like we talked about, you fit from the top down. Things like your shoulder width, your neck size, and your arm side depth all travel together as a pack, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while your bust might change a lot, if your arm side depth is X, I can generally predict what your shoulder cross width will be. But those measurements are very difficult to measure. It can be very difficult to measure your cross shoulder. It can be very difficult to measure your arm side. But it's pretty easy to measure your upper chest. I'm going to show you how. And for our audio only listeners, I'm going to describe what I'm doing. So I have a measuring tape, and it's pretty new. You know, measuring tapes are made of soft plastic and they stretch out over time. So periodically check your measuring tape against a hard ruler to make sure it's still in good shape.
I think that might have happened to me during the pandemic because my body changed sizes, but my measuring tape was like, no, it didn't. And I was like, I don't know.
I've been on with the ride.
Been pretty inactive for a long time now.
So I'm standing up and I'm going to try and keep my body as relaxed as possible while I do this. This measuring tape is going to come flat across the back of my shoulders, right under the arm. And then it comes up. And the reason it comes up at an angle is because we want to get above the breast tissue. We're kind of trying to measure the smallest circumference in here. I'm going to drop my arms. Big breath in and out. Relax and read it. Ideally, we would measure our bodies. Somebody else would measure our bodies, but we're not going to. Now, for the designers out there, your size chart will show that the smallest size, the upper chest, is larger than the full bust. That doesn't mean that that person has a concave chest or that the ribs get wider there. That's a function of the fact that we're measuring on a hypotenuse here.
Yeah, so which that is, you just told me that the other day, and I was like, oh, obviously, of course. But I mean, it is, there are bodies and silhouettes that you can see where it appears that someone's chest is getting wider, but that's more, usually that would be more like their shoulder muscles actually making it look like that than it is that fact, right? Anyway.
Yeah. And so, yes. And so the very smallest size, like the size 28-inch full bust, will have an upper chest that is bigger than 28 inches because of those diagonals, because of that muscle tissue back there. That doesn't mean there's necessarily zero breast material. But yeah, that is part of what happens. And so you can see how, because we're measuring on that diagonal, that measurement is never going to correspond to a measurement in the pattern, ever. Because ideally, our pattern, all of our rows are going to be parallel to the ground. They're going to be circumferences and not angles. It's kind of like when you cut a carrot, you can cut across it or you can cut it at an angle. So our sweater should always cut straight across the side of the carrot. Mm-hmm. We never want, what is that, like julienne? We never want julienne body measurements.
I don't know. In my head, I'm like, right, for roasted veggies, diagonal.
Yes.
For soup, straight.
Yes. Sweater, soup, measure your body for a roasted veggie. Okay.
So that was one of the biggest things that took me a minute when I started trying to wrap my head around upper bust. And I actually remember asking you probably 2.5 or 3 years ago, like, so where do I measure my finished garment to predict to give the upper bust? But so what you would really do if you're looking at your upper bust measurement. So let me rewind a moment. As Jen said, she and I both provide, and lots of other designers do too, charts that say like, this garment is intended to fit someone with an actual upper bust size of, and I'll have a little chart in the sizing section that has each size and the predicted actual upper bust measurement. So that means the measurement of your body, not a measurement from the garment. It will not correspond to any number in the schematic, like Jen said, because it's a body measurement. So you can find which one of those is closest to your body. And then that's super easy. Sizing kind of done, right? Jen and I both say after that step that you want to figure out if you need a full bust adjustment. And we have slightly different ways of doing that. Like I think you put it in your sizing information. I put it in the bust start and whatever. The information is in both patterns to measure yourself for a full bust adjustment, which I recommend you check that when you choose a size based on your actual upper bust. You may very well need to make a full bust adjustment because you may end up in a smaller size than you have been making for yourself. And so now let's talk about in a different situation, because I feel that our patterns are fairly straightforward, but I'll always take any question on the sizing information in my pattern if you have one. When someone doesn't provide that actual upper bust measurement or those body measurements in a pattern, and you're just looking at the schematic, which has a full bust with the intended positive ease or negative ease added into it, right? So then how would you use your actual upper bust measurement then, Jen?
This, I think, because we know that the industry standard is to give full bust guidance. So how do I get to that better fit point if that's all I'm given, right? So we know that if you have a larger cup size than predicted and you choose on full bust, your sweaters are going to fit too sloppy. They're going to be too wide at the neck, too deep in the armhole. And yeah, you'll have the amount of ease that the designer intended the full bust, but the whole sweater is going to be too big for you. And it's unintuitive for people who have large breasts to think I need to size down. But that's what we're recommending, is that for this part of your body, you need to size down from this part of your body. And conversely, if you're somebody who has a smaller cup size, more of that full bust circumference is torso and less of it is boobs. You have a bigger body and you need to go up a size, right? And so we know that intuitively. And so for some people, it can just be a matter of reflecting on how have my garments fit so far? Do I have a sloppy fit or or is there strain here? And then experimenting with going up or down a size. That's the lived experience answer. But the academic answer is to go pull a size chart, right? So I often recommend that people go to Isolde's free chart for women. We'll link it. And circle your measurements. See what designers think your body is compared to the averages. So for example, for Brittany, she would circle, on my size chart, she would be circling for a 42-inch bust. She'd be smack between size 4 and 5, and her 47-inch full bust would be smack between 5 and 6. So she's a full size off. And so then she can say, I need to go down one size because that's what's baked into these population standards that underlie all the charts. The charts will all be a little different. They'll have tweaks. Designers live into their charts. They get feedback from their audiences. But in general, if you go to a size chart and a size chart is like, you have a disparity here, then that's population data. And you can generally know that the same things are underlying all the size charts.
Okay, so that's really great advice. So what Jen is saying is, because I was interpreting it one way, and so I'm going to break it down to make sure that people get the clarification.
Yeah, say it another way for us. Yeah.
Well, so at first I thought you meant like you're going to go and look and see where your body falls, but then I was like, but then how do they translate that back to the pattern? You don't. That's not what we're doing. What you're doing is look at your full bust measurement on a size chart. Look at your upper bust measurement on a size chart. See if they are the same size. If they are not the same size, which is normal, how many sizes apart are they? Most patterns are looking at a 4-inch size gap, but you can see that information in the pattern. Sometimes it will be less. Sometimes it could even be more. But so then if you know you're 2 sizes apart or one, when Jen says 1 size apart, I think she's actually meaning 4 inches apart.
4 inches.
It could be 2 inches or something like that, which would be more of a half size, but that will depend on the pattern. So when you have that information, like I'm a half size apart, I'm a full size apart, then you can look at, again, the full bust in the pattern and say, okay, so if I was picking for my full bust, it would be size 6, but actually my upper bust is size 5, so I'm going to make size 5, right? So that's basically what she's saying. But those numbers on the size chart, like the size chart will sometimes say at the top 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's not going to be like the size corresponding to the pattern.
Yeah.
You'll have to look to see where that information is provided. Some schematics and patterns, or some patterns that I would say are giving the least amount of information to still be considered giving you information, will only give you the schematic, which without a sizing section, and the schematic will kind of only have the numbers with the e's baked in, which makes it like the less information you have up front, the harder that it is to really like size yourself well. And that's where I'm saying, like, I don't care how much shaping you put in a pattern or what, if you're doing XYZ, if you are giving that information up front of the sizing, ease, maybe some actual body measurements, even if not, then you're doing a good job as a designer, right? But if you're not telling someone how much actual, if you're just saying like 8 to 12 inches of positive ease, here are the finished measurements of the schematic, then is it 8 or is it 12 inches? That was the actual body. Now we cannot reverse engineer even if you wanted to, right? So
yeah,
that might have been a little less clear at the end there, but basically what we're saying is like, you're always looking to figure out for yourself some basic rules that you can use even in a pattern that gives you very little information. And hopefully most patterns will give you more information so that you can make easier choices. I think we want to talk about a couple of other ways to get a good fit if you're still struggling with the upper bust, full bust situation, right?
Yeah. And I want to add, the blog post that I will link to will walk a reader through how to use the recommended ease and a size chart to say, okay, the designer recommended this ease. They think that my bust size is this size. It's not. I'll do this instead. So there's a literal physical example. I updated that link that I put in my patterns. I gave it a big update to really cover this. So I'll link to it so we don't need to belabor it anymore.
Yeah, and in Brittany's example also we have the difference there where she would be in 4-inch grading, she would be 2 sizes apart. So, or she would be 1 size apart, sorry. So
one size apart, yeah.
Our recommendation for you, Brittany, is to start sizing down 1 size and probably adding bust darts in order to finesse your fit and see what that does for you. Yeah. Although I would also say for you, Brittany, that I think you might also want to look for an open gauge garment that has a more triangular shape. So like when I think of an oversized garment now, I still think of something like a dress that would be narrow in the shoulders and then would become oversized by going like out as it comes down, because that will still have that will still stay. Oh, actually I wore this today because I can show you this tank, which I modified, has this kind of thing that I'm talking about. I'm not going to move this too much because it gets, I'm going to make everything crazy. But up here, this is my cross back or my cross chest, right? So that these straps are not oversized. They're not too wide. They're actually like a little bit narrow, right? But as the tank is knit, it gets wider and wider as it goes down. So it comes all the way like to my thigh here, and it has more positive ease as it gets to the bottom. But up at the top, the fit is not really positive ease. The top is just my measurements, right? So that's how I'm designing my more oversized garments lately, because that to me is like just a more attractive or more interesting oversized that feels a little more intentional. It might just be that you don't really like oversized garments that are oversized, like drop shoulder, really large up here, and then narrower actually as they go down.
I think what you're identifying is you're illustrating one example of a principle that I teach in judging patterns, which is it can't be oversized everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
So you're saying you can choose something that fits well here and is oversized here. But you can
Mm-hmm.
also do something that's oversized up here, but maybe is cropped,
Right.
right? Too much fabric everywhere, first of all, doesn't stay put. And second of all, leaves us looking and feeling overwhelmed. But I did notice that in Brittany's comment to us, she remarked that she prefers negative ease garments. What that probably is identifying is that she needs to size down, is that by going with the guidance that we're giving her, which is that she needs to go down a size because of her discrepancy compared to the averages. There's nothing wrong with Brittany's body. It's just compared to the averages. She has a difference. That she's going to get that better fit for the rest of her body. It's not really that the garment is negative ease. It's that she's going to have negative ease at the full bust. And that leads us to the trust fall that is using upper chest. Because often if we rely on upper chest, we will not have the same amount of ease here. We won't have the same amount of ease as the designer if we have this difference that most of us have a difference. So you can, as a general rule, if the pattern has a fairly standard amount of ease, like up to 4 inches of positive ease, you can have up to -1 inches of ease at the full bust. Because our bodies, we're only this full bust measurement, briefly. We rapidly increase and then rapidly decrease. So only for about 2 inches of the entire length of our garment are we that full bust measurement. And knitting goes where it needs to go. And so you can have some negative ease there. My biggest caveat for that, one, and we'll talk about this, is you'll need to add length to compensate because it'll be strained there and that eats up the length, right?
And that's what bust darts really are, right?
That's the full bust adjustment that we do by adding bust darts, which add rows only to the center front. And I want to ask you about your top that you're wearing in a minute. So let's put a pin in that.
Yes, ma'am.
And the other caveat is that if all of your measurements get wider as you go down, then you might also benefit from adding some width in the front. So if you are somebody like me who also has a belly and hips that are larger than the size chart predicts, then you might want to add a little bit of width to the front only of your garment to accommodate that, to still get a fit that feels like the one in the design. So follow the full fit up here, because our full bust is a lower torso. It's a lower torso fit measurement. You know, the full bust happens well underneath the underarm. So we want to fit the upper torso and then fit all these things.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I spent a lot of time feeling like in my early designs, like the full bust measurement would happen like right at the armpits. And then, although the distance for me is shorter than average between like my armpit and my full bust, which is probably why I kind of always felt like that was, anyway, you learn a lot. I thought I knew a lot about bodies as a yoga teacher, but looking at bodies through the lens of garments is a whole other lens to learn and to see bodies in different ways. So yeah, your boobs are actually way below your armpits, and just in case, like me, you thought that they were up here somehow.
Sometimes they are.
Maybe
I've seen some things.
That one time when Madonna was breastfeeding and wore
every
that
Renaissance
one dress.
Festival. Every Renaissance Festival.
Exactly.
None of this counts.
Yeah, if you are making a sweater to wear over your Ren Fair garment, then you will need to follow different sizing advice.
Does not apply.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's easy for us to have been to think that our breasts are, our bust apex is parallel with the underarm, because that's where it usually ends with sweaters. And part of that's because there's ease under the arm. And part of that's just because that's how garments are made.
Yeah. Yeah. But so we also have crossback to talk about, correct? Or yeah, what else do we? Okay. So I keep bringing up crossback because I actually really love using this measurement myself. My crossback is not different than what would be predicted for my size. However, I always think that it is, probably because of my juicy biceps, if I'm like looking at myself in a photo. So it's led me to feel like I have wide shoulders. And that was part of why I would often be like, let me size for my full bust. That will work for my shoulders.
Wide shoulders.
Right. But it's actually more of a wide bicep. And so my shoulders and my upper bust are in the same predicted measurement. So if I measure my actual upper bust, that size will be the size that my cross shoulder or cross back measurement is. Now, on size charts, they sometimes call it a cross shoulder or cross front. In a pattern schematic, it's usually called cross back on the garment, right? Like I put that in my garment schematic.
It should not be called cross shoulder because cross shoulder goes from outside to outside.
Okay, then I think I'm just mixing that up. But cross, I think I've seen it called cross front.
But it shouldn't be.
Okay. Yes. Now, technically, the measurement from here to here on the front is not going to be the same as the measurement on the back.
That's
right. We are wider across the back. However, both of these measurements can work fairly interchangeably when you're looking at a pattern to choose your size, because you're likely going to be in the same size in your cross back and cross front. Would you say that?
Probably. I haven't done any thinking about that, so I feel a little on the spot. It's usually not much wider. It can be up to an inch wider in the back than the front. Mm-hmm. I know that Isolde recommends using crossback because it is wider, mm-hmm. and because we do this a lot, and so you need that spread across the back.
Yeah. So the best bet, and something that we recommend, especially if you're like part of a knit group, is to have like a measurement night and have someone else take your crossback and have someone else help you with your arm side and all of that, so that you can have, and do it regularly. Do it a few times a year. Have like a notebook where you keep your measurements. It is an invaluable tool for you to have your own size chart. And you honestly can just design whatever you want for yourself from there if you understand gauge and you understand a size chart.
I don't think we can overemphasize enough getting your measurements before each project. Mm-hmm. I will never forget being in that wardrobe class with that student who had a farm job in the summer and didn't update their measurements frequently. And so they would take their measurements in the winter when they were knitting, and then their summer garments didn't fit.
Because in the winter they were like way smaller, right? Because they would like bulk up and get all muscly in the summer. I know it is important. You do not have to necessarily measure every single point, because certain points, like your crossback, are not going to change as frequently as points like your full bust, which changes constantly, right? It's another reason that it might be a better measurement. But certainly if your body has changed size, then your crossback likely changed sizes a little bit too. So if you have friends that like to make things, they won't even think it's weird, and they'll probably know how to help you better. But in case where you don't have access to people to help you measure, that's totally fine. I've been there too. You can then use a garment as another really good base to compare and measure the crossback of the garment, right? In order to know what you like for a garment in particular. In fact, if you have a garment that you want to like create a knit replica of, or want to choose a size that will fit you like something you already have, right? That's a super easy way as well to measure any of those measurements on a garment and compare them to your schematic and see what size is the closest in the schematic to the fit that you already know you like, right?
Yes. Find something in your wardrobe, hand knit or not, that matches the weight and construction of the pattern you're contemplating. Take the measurements of that thing and then pick the size on the schematic that's the closest match. So if you haven't yet developed a sense of, do I like 2 inches of ease? Do I like 1 inch of ease? Do I like 3 inches of ease for this particular construction? Then referring to something you already own and love is a great way to choose a size.
Yeah. And even if it's like something that you own, I'm designing a tank right now that is loosely based on the measurements of just like an old fast fashion tank that's in my wardrobe for like 3 years. And it's that existing garment is definitely not a perfect fit, but I was able to use it as a starting point and then tweak the measurements from there based on what I wanted for my design. So it was just like sort of a cheat sheet for me, so that I didn't have to think about like, how long exactly is it? 21? Is it 20 inches? Like whatever, that you can measure something and then be like, well, I know this is a little too big or too loose. It would be great if it was just a little smaller than this. So you have a lot of information at your fingertips right now that allows you to choose a size more consciously. It does take a little longer, but I mean, this is all part of the process when you're knitting a garment, is to take your time and figure out the size, and take your time to swatch and figure out the fabric, and get all of those pieces to come together a little better.
Yeah, and to use cross front, because let's talk about how to use that cross chest measurement. So a cross chest measurement, let's talk about first of all what it is. It's going to be right under your arm, straight across, and it's a caliper measurement. It's not a girth measurement. So you wouldn't want to hold that tape measure close to your body. You'd want a straight line across. So when I say caliper, imagine like a C-clamp measuring how big something is. So it's a caliper measurement across the front from the split straight across. Okay. And that's gonna help you identify, particularly in a set-in sleeve, your ideal width for the placement of your shoulders. It can be very difficult to use cross front in other constructions to choose a size. It's very difficult to use it for a raglan. You can use it in a drop shoulder to see how far over that garment will fall. But to get your best fit in a front, in a set-in sleeve, ideally, like, you can throw out everything we said about upper chest and rely on that measurement, because that seam is what drives the fit entirely in a set-in sleeve. Now, we use cross chest because that can be a difficult one to measure accurately, and it can feel really subjective. Ideally, you'll have a garment that is a set-in sleeve that you can measure across and get a sense of what fits well, because in a set-in sleeve, you want to be able to move your arm without it taking the whole garment up, and that has to do with where that seam falls. So that's how you would usually use a cross chest measurement.
Yes, thank you. So what else have we got on choosing a size?
Well, let's make sure that we answered. Let me
Brittany.
pull it up. Oh, your shirt.
Yeah, what's your question about my shirt?
Does it have a high-low hem, or is that just because of the boobs?
It's not my pattern, and I knit it a long time ago. But I would say it's because of my boobs. I don't think it's on purpose. But I also think that the sides have gotten longer because it's completely seamless silk mesh with no, when I do a seamless in the round knit, that just sounded like so bratty, but
when I do it.
When I do it.
But
that's when I'm from Connecticut, everyone. I'm sorry. It's just part of our sound. It's how we sound. When I create a design that's a seamless in the round design, I usually do some sort of slip stitch, something along the side to create more tension, because of the fact that the sides will stretch longer than the front or the back. And so this tank definitely has some of that going on. And it is also because I need a full bust adjustment, that it's coming up in the front. But it's like very long and flowy. And so I think all of that works. This was in our most worn knits episode 10, I think.
Yeah.
When I wear this tank all the time. Yeah.
And it's not always that it's stretching that does that, but when you have an oversized garment, so it comes out to here, a couple inches away from the body, and it's on the bias, it's going to drop. And it's going to be longer looking on the sides. But yes, you stood up earlier, and I was able to see that the front of that is several inches shorter. So when you're going to have breast tissue and you were to measure in the front and the back, so imagine taking that inner neck point that we talk about so much and measuring straight down to the underbust circumference in both the front and the back. That tape measure, as it travels over your breast tissue, that measurement is going to be longer in the front than the back. And so really, to address this fit issue that we have with not having as much ease in the front as the designer recommends, what we really need to do is we need to add length. Because we're only that width briefly. We don't, assuming that our rest of our measurements are in line with the size chart, so assuming waist and hip are in line with the size chart, and we're not, like, I get progressively wider as you go down, but assuming somebody who's not, and they stick with the size chart measurements, they don't really need to add width to the front to accommodate for that increased circumference at the bust. They need to add length, because the knitting will go where it's needed, but it's going to steal from the bottom of the sweater. And so that's why we make those short rows in the front only to add length to bring that hem back down parallel to the ground. And so when I'm thinking about Brittany, and I want to go back to her notes.
Yeah, and Brittany, you almost definitely need a full bust adjustment because
yeah,
for your predicted, I don't have a size chart in front of me, Jen does, but for your predicted size, I would imagine that you're several inches larger in the full bust. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So she said that she would make more knits that are drapey if she could figure out the best size for her to knit when utilizing drapey fabrics. So my overall advice would be to review the pattern, and a flowy garment, if you want it to fit well, which means be the shape of your body and not look sloppy, I'm looking for a few things. First of all, I'm looking for shoulder shaping. If it's a straight rectangle across the top, you're going to get extra fabric in here that's going to make it feel and fit sloppy. So look for that shoulder shaping. Get bust darts in there if you need them, and choose based on your upper chest. So for Brittany, she'll be sizing down and adding length in the front only. Yeah, I would do that. And then she sent us some follow-up information that had to do with picking fiber. So choosing a fiber with the same properties as the one in the pattern for it to fit and look like and behave over time like the one in the pattern. It's a whole separate topic. We can't get, I don't think, too far into that. But
no, we have episode number 1. We talk a bit about substituting fibers, but I will say if you're having trouble creating a garment that fits the way you like, then just like focus on one skill at a time and don't substitute the fiber. If you have a fiber you want to work with, find a pattern that uses that fiber. If you love a pattern and you're going to purchase yarn for it, then purchase a yarn that is the same fiber, as close to the same composition as you can get. It doesn't have to be the same exact yarn, although for people who have a lot of trouble getting gauge, it could be that you're just choosing yarns that are a little bit too different. So like choosing the exact same yarn is one of the easiest ways to get gauge. I think, I don't know if that's necessarily true. It's one of the ways to eliminate variables. That's what I'll say. But
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's a different kind of conversation though that we had last week. But in terms of sizing, yeah, if you're using a different fiber, it might be that you actually created a garment that is the exact size of the schematic, but it looks totally different because not even that it's the wrong size, but because the fiber is going to behave in such a different way.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of instances like that too. So eliminate variables by choosing patterns for a specific yarn that are going to be like as close to that yarn as possible.
Yeah.
And then the more comfortable you are with choosing your size or with substituting yarn, then that's the time to experiment more, you know?
Yep. So, too long, didn't read. Ready? Get familiar with your measurements, all of them. Get them accurate, get familiar with them. Look at the garments that you have already that you like, and get familiar with the amount of ease that you have in those garments. Then you can make a more informed decision just by looking at your own measurements in the schematic, and you can forget everything we said about using these shorthands like upper chest, right? You can just look at your body, look at the measurements, see what you like. So that's too long, didn't read 1. The other tip I want to to impart here is something I think you said a second ago that you went quick over. Make one change at a time, right? This is a long-term adventure. You're not gonna, like, if you've only ever knit quick, easy, designed to knit garments and you've never focused on this before, don't expect it to be immediately perfect. So play around. Make one garment that you already know in a format you like. Like maybe you love knitting top down in the round raglans. Add bust darts. Start there. Okay. Then experiment with what size you pick. Approach this experimentation as a fun new aspect of the craft / fitting is a whole separate hobby, right? So think about fitting as a separate sport. Yeah, that's, I had one more thing, but it's gone. It's gone forever.
That's okay. I want to end because I always now apparently I'm like super mom with a little quick stepmom story, because we were talking about, my 2 stepdaughters are going to separate schools for the first time ever this coming year because they're now, one is going to middle school and one is still in elementary. And so we were saying, like, now you guys are not going to be together. We want you to like have your phone, because our middle schooler is starting to like do things with friends, and her friends, she's still young enough, her friends' parents reach out to us, but we're like, we're asking you now to take on the responsibility of also reaching out to us, because really it should be you being like, can I hang out with so and so today, right? And she got really overwhelmed. She got really scared about it and was just like afraid that she was going to fail somehow. She's so sweet and she's always worried about like, is she going to be able to handle this? And she doesn't want to let us down. And so, like I said to her, and what I would say to everyone is, like I said to her, we will never ask more of you than we believe you can do, right? And if you are learning a new thing like knitting and you're developing your skill as a knitter, you have to like parent yourself through learning this hobby and not ask more of yourself than you're capable of. And know that no one's like first handful of garments fit them well. If your expectation is that something is going to be perfect, then you will be heartbroken, because it's just not gonna happen. And the fastest route through all of this is actually to do it, right? Like, the intellectualizing is awesome. We obviously, Jen and I like that, but you've got to just do it. Just go for it.
Get on the ground. Mm-hmm.
Accept what happens. Summertime is a great time to like knit a bunch of tanks that don't take a long time and experiment with the fit there. That'll help you when you go into a larger project, right? Like, don't invest in the most expensive yarn ever if you're just getting started. Like, get some budget yarn, experiment, make that the practice is the hobby, right? So that is also like a big tip that isn't a sizing tip, but is just a tip. Like, meet yourself where you are and grow from there, one step at a time.
I remembered.
Great.
It's two things. First of all, you can always make a muslin of a knit. So sewists will make a mock-up with inexpensive fabric. You can do the same thing, and I've done this before as a designer when I want to make sure that the schematic I'm about to write my fingering weight garment in is going to work the way I think it will. And so I'll take my swatch to the fabric store. I'll get an inexpensive cut of fabric that matches the drape as much as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'll just use the schematic to draw out the size and the construction. And then I'll just either whip, stitch, or pin it together. It doesn't have to be perfect. That will tell you what you're going to make. And is a really low time investment, low budget way to see what you're going to make, right? Because knitting for me is most satisfying when I can predict the outcome of what I'm going to do. And the other tip is the most flexible construction, the one that you can get to fit you the best, the easiest, is set in. And you'll have the most variability with that if it's a seamed garment, but it doesn't have to be. But if you want to play around with some of these things and, work on quote unquote perfecting or honing your skill set and fit, a set and sleeve is going to give you the most accessible toolkit for that.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love set and sleeves. They are actually easier to customize. People think they're harder to make, but they're not. I don't think they're harder to make, really.
I think that has to do with gauge.
Yeah, and there's a lot of a set and sleeve uses, if it's set and sleeve in the round, it uses in the round. It uses flat almost always. It uses small circumference. So you might have to make a lot of swatches, but a set and sleeve also offers you the like ability to work on one section at a time really easily and tweak things if you need to. You can make the shoulders more narrow, etc., so much more easily than like a raglan that you really have to like rewrite the whole pattern if you're going to try and change those relationships. Absolutely. So this was, as we promised, a really dense episode, but I hope that it's helpful to everyone. Don't give up. You don't have to give up. You just have to accept some imperfect situations in order to get to one that feels more perfect. Yeah.
And as evidenced by my 6-month struggle with my last design, we're all in it together, slogging our way, perfecting and honing our craft, building our skills in
And
all
if it's
ways.
not your job to finish something, I totally give you permission to put it away in the naughty corner for like 3 years if you want. No one's...
Or more.
Yeah, you can just... I can't bring myself to tell someone to throw away knitting because I'm like, you might want to recycle the yarn one day, but you can get rid of it if you need to get rid of something. Free yourself from something that isn't bringing you joy. Find a project that will at least bring you joy while you practice. And that's why the design to knit garments can be great, because that's a great place to practice some techniques and start figuring things out, so that the more detailed patterns are not as overwhelming. Yeah.
Also, it's just one stitch at a time and it's a hobby. So whatever. Just do whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, just do whatever you want and make whatever it is.
Do whatever. Enjoy your practice. Enjoy your knitting practice. Whatever that means to you. Yeah.
I can't do that. I'm kidding.
Actually, I hate my knitting practice now.
All right.
Oh, this has been so fun. Okay.
Yeah, we're goofy, so we're done. Wrap up is Jen and I are going to be meeting for the first time ever in 2 weeks. Oh my goodness.
Is it 2 weeks? It's 2 weeks.
It's 2 weeks from tomorrow as we record this. It will be like 6 days after this airs. And on that very same day, we're going to be going to String Theory. And some of y'all have signed up. We are so excited about that. Hi, Kirsten.
Hi, Kirsten.
And if you have signed up and you're watching this podcast, please tell us. We'd love to know.
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, we'd love to see you. If you're in the greater Chicago area, that's where String Theory is. And we're going to be talking mostly about yarn substitutions, but you can bring whatever kind of questions you have for us. And if you watch this, we're chatty folks. We're going to get around to whatever you want to talk about. So that's very exciting. One, what else do we have?
I'm so excited about that. Like, what are we going to do now? I don't think we've talked about what we're going to do next episode. We talked about recording when we were in Chicago, like during a live from...
That would be our next episode then. I guess we're going to do a live... Yeah. So I guess we're going to do not necessarily a live episode, but a recording in person together. Right. Yeah. I guess we don't have anything else for you all.
So let us know what you want us to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we will continue to talk about sizing. We'll continue to talk about gauge. We'll continue to talk about yarn substitutions, because those things are hugely dense categories of information. But if you want more info in those categories specifically, then give us your questions so that we can help. And Brittany, we would love to hear how this works out for you. If you have any further questions, hit me up. Let's talk more so that we can make sure you got the advice we promised you. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Well then.
Happy knitting, babes.
Happy knitting, everybody.
See you soon.
Bye. See you soon. Ah!